Long. I'm Jeremy Lin from IDS. Thank you to UNU-WIDER for the invitation to be part of this panel. So the work that I'm presenting here today is part of a larger program that is looking at the nexus of social protection and humanitarian assistance in situations of protracted crisis. So these are areas with a combination of conflict, displacement, and climate associated pressures. And specifically, this work is drawing on mixed method research in two settings of Ethiopia where the government-led social protection program, the Productive Safety Net program, is delivering food and or cash transfers 6 months of the year to a population of around 8 million. And this exists alongside humanitarian aid delivery, both through government channel, through WFP channel, and through other channels as well. So the work specifically that we're presenting here is based on data collection in two different areas of Ethiopia. There were 12 districts overall in the northern area of Amhara. So this is the area towards the shaded in gray towards the top. This was a region that was affected by the spillover of a conflict that broke out in the Tigray region in 2020. So the spillover of that conflict into Amhara affected this region in 2021. And we also collected data in areas of Oromia region. This is the area further south. And in this area, there was conflict relating to regional protests in 2016. There was also a conflict involving members of the Oromia and Somali populations of border conflict that affected this area in 2018. And then also notably, a number of severe climate shocks affected this area since 2020. So the Productive Safety Net program, or the PSNP, has operated in this region since 2006. And retrospective evidence of the program shows that there have been improvements in reducing the food gap, as well as in reducing distressed sales of assets in this area. But there has been less success in building assets or in increasing yields in agricultural production. In these places, USAID was funding a graduation initiative from 2016. This is a rather limited graduation package. And colleagues here from IFPRI, they were involved in evaluating the program. So there was a baseline data collection in 2018 and an end line that was conducted in 2021. And then basic research program, we did a follow-up data collection in these areas, surveying in Amhara in the north in late 2022 and in Oromia in early 2023. We also conducted participatory and qualitative research in mid-2023 in both of these areas. So this is some data from the qualitative and participatory research, and with focus groups that were segmented by age and gender, we conducted over 30 focus groups across these two regions. We sought to understand how livelihoods had changed over time. So we first asked groups to identify indicators for how they would compare how livelihoods had changed then in 2008, which was the early years of the PSNP operating in this area, and now in 2023 at the time of the research. And we did a proportional piling exercise, visualization method, where participants were using counters to compare these two periods. So more counters in 2023 for health and sanitation, the top line there, would indicate that health and sanitation had improved over this period of time. And so what you can see here from the data is that the trends, Lasta and Bugna, the two left-hand columns, those are areas of Amhara. Chiro and Daro Lebu on the right are in Oromia. And it's a mixed picture, as you can see from these trends. So there's been substantial improvements in health and sanitation relating to the introduction of community-based health insurance, to the construction of more health centers, to there being more health extension workers operating in these areas. There's been improvements, not in all areas, but in the areas where it has happened, it has been quite significant. Changes in water access and availability, improvements in road and road transport and electricity. But then you can see with food security and peace and security notably, there's been a significant diminishing over this period of time. And household self-assessment exercises that we conducted corroborated this. In Amhara, their respondents reported a decline in household conditions since 2008, with many relying on community or community support or relief assistance, even before the impacts of the conflict that affected this area in 2021. Somewhat better trends in Oromia, with evidence of some savings up to 2020, but a dip since then due to a sequence of droughts and inflationary pressures. This is data from the household survey, the follow-up survey that BASIC conducted, building on the IFPRI evaluation data from this region. So showing the poverty trends from the baseline for the graduation program that was undertaken in these areas. And so you can see there's been a big increase in poverty levels between the baseline and the end line for the SPEAR graduation initiative. What was happening here during this period in Amhara is the COVID pandemic, but then also the conflict starting in Amhara, spilling over from Tigray. In Oromia, there was a series of regional insecurity events and more localized conflicts that affected this area during that period. And then you can see the levels of poverty continued to increase in Oromia after the end line. They flattened out in Amhara. What was happening in Oromia in that period was some severe climate shocks that affected this area. There are somewhat diverging trends when we looked at productive assets. So this was the number of assets reported by households combined with data on asset prices from local markets. And you can see a falling trend in productive assets measured for households in Amhara, but in increasing during this period in Oromia. And I think significantly for the Oromia sample, there was a large conflict in this region in 2018. At the time, this was measured to be the world's largest displacement crisis during that year. So there was widespread displacement, but it was a very sharp, acute crisis. Returns happened almost immediately from late 2018 into 2019. So that was what was happening there. Drought shocks continued to affect the area, but nonetheless, you can see productive assets for households in this area improved. So a big part of the story in both regions has been the diminishing value of the PSMP cash transfer. This is data from the Ethiopian Statistics Authority, and you can just see the sustained and really high levels of food price inflation. So even before the COVID pandemic, going back to 2017, 2018, just year on year, very high rates of inflation. And in the program, they did seek to increase the size of the cash transfers. So this is data from the government, from its payment system. You can see almost a doubling of the cash transfer value across these areas from 2019 up to 2023. But nonetheless, even with this doubling of the transfer value, this was not keeping pace with the inflationary pressures affecting this area. So unsurprisingly, local views of the PSMP were that it provided a protective function, but not much beyond that. So that was the view of, for example, a member of a focus group with displaced men. I have 6 family members. Do you think 90 kgs of food, that would be per month, is enough for 6 people? It is very difficult. It is like not dying, but not living either. It is like being between life and death. Or this quote from a focus group in Amhara, which is really capturing the longer term picture here. The livelihood situations of people have become worse. For every 10 PSMP beneficiaries, maybe 1 has changed or improved their livelihood, moving from the poorest to the middle. But it is a very small number who have done so. The majority of beneficiaries are not improving their livelihood. Rather, they are using the aid simply to sustain life. And this other quote in the middle from a development agent, so a local level implementer of the program in the area, also confirming the sentiment that the safety net has protected households but not necessarily promoted livelihoods. So in terms of the implications then of the research, programs providing individualized and household level support are understandably constrained in what they can achieve in building adaptive capacities versus absorptive capacities, the capacities for these households to be buffered from these shocks. So improved performance on routine program functions, such as giving adequate and timely assets, that itself could really make a significant difference to resilience, let alone adding on all the bells and whistles to these programs. Just increasing the transfer value and having the transfers delivered in a timely way, we argue would make a big difference. Household asset building and support of adaptive capacities requires much more extensive packages of support, whether these are agricultural subsidies or asset transfers, startup funds. It's been, I think, frustrating for the program implementers that there is a livelihoods component of the PSMP, which at no point in time in the history of the program has been adequately financed. And the other side of the story of this research that we've written up elsewhere is that there's been an enormous finance crisis for the PSMP over this period of time. So implementers were seeking to really try and guard the transfers component of the program as much as they could. So the livelihoods component, that was paused. Many public works were paused. And even with those measures, they were still unable to maintain the level of the transfer value in some regions. And then finally, building adaptive capacities requires also improved provision of public services and strengthened intersectoral coordination between these and the PSMP. I think it is encouraging when you look at the longer livelihood trends that there has been significant improvements in health, in roads, and telecommunications, and so forth, that the picture for rural development in Ethiopia is qualitatively different now than it was 15 years ago when the PSMP was introduced. So if the program could be adequately financed, we could see very, very different results and opportunities for making improvements to livelihoods. So thank you very much.